I was able to have a conversation with my wife. And we sat down, and that was the first time I had shared it to anybody. And it was like, you know why I did all this? You know why all this addiction, all this alcohol, all this cheating on you? And it's like, because I have felt so broken to be able to not share anybody what had happened to me whenever I was little. And that was the very first person that heard it.
Hey, what's up, guys? So today's episode is brought to you by our proud sponsor, Elevated Silence. This is one of my favorite sponsors, not only because Jim Hood is a very dear, close friend of mine. He's been on this podcast several times, but because I am an avid user of this product. As you guys know, I love to go to the range. I love to train civilians and law enforcement. And this is a suppressor that I use each and every time I go to the range. I can tell you this, every time I bring it out, I get nothing but compliments of just how quiet it is. There's people are always looking for these differences in suppressors. They want it lightweight, but with lightweight, it's probably going to be a little bit louder. The heavier the weight, it's going to be quieter. And I think Jim has found the perfect combination of both, which is why I love this suppressor. He makes everything from 22 to 300 Norma. So if you guys are looking for a suppressor for your rifle or pistol, be sure to check Elevated Silence out. Use the code SMS15 to get 15% off. And also he has some awesome merch for these red hats and this red shirt right now. If you purchase it, a percentage of the proceeds goes to the American Suppressor Association, which will defend your rights to be able to use suppressors as you should, as any American should. All right? Thank you, and God bless.
Welcome to Shoot Me Straight. Dave Fields. Today, Eddie's out. We have Jose Aguilar. Did I get it right?
Aguilar, yes,
okay,
sir,
got it. He's a buddy of mine, a buddy of Isaiah's that is from Destiny Church and has a really cool story around recovery mostly, and especially in the last few years. Sure. But I want to let's get some of your background of, where you grew up, how'd you get here to Santa Rosa Beach, what it was like childhood, so forth.
Well, thanks for having me, first and foremost. I grew up I was born in San Antonio, in Texas, and then we grew up in a little town outside of Texas, which is called New Braunfels, right about 35 miles off of that.
I know New Braunfels.
Yeah. So we grew up there, and like anything, my parents were basically my dad was working for the Ford company as a car detailer, and my mom was working for an accountant at the time for a company. Okay. And it was, you would say, like a rough living, didn't have the best luxury, but never not food on the table. Yeah. And we grew up, I grew up there till I was right around like 10 years old. Okay. So with the transition of 10 to 11 years old, we moved here to Santa Rosa Beach. Oh, wow. And we were able to stay at an aunt's house in Freeport for a couple years. And the reason for the transition from there to here, that was in 2005. And the transition from there was because over there at the time it was deep whenever everything was at its low. Mm-hmm. And here it was basically starting to kick off. The construction industry was starting to kick off. And the rest of my family's into the painting business, and everything was kicking off. So they encouraged them to kind of move over here and kind of try to start something of their own.
In New Braunfels, did you have like extended family there, brothers, sisters?
Well, my family consists of my parents and then 3 sisters. Okay. I'm the youngest out of 4. So there's 3 sisters, and I am the only boy in the family. Okay. So, in that town, it was everybody knew everybody. Now it's not what it was before, just because it just has blown up so much. And we went back about a year ago, and it was like, man, this has all changed, right? Yeah. But moving over here was basically what we always wanted as a kid. Our vacation every year, my parents would drive over here for about 2 weeks whenever they got their vacation, and we would stay with our aunts and uncles. Gotcha. And then they would basically leave us with our aunts and uncles, and they would kind of pick up some work here and there to kind of just, get a little bit more on top of their, staying on vacation.
I don't know if a lot of people understand the difference between New Braunfels and Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. Like there's, as far as geography, I mean, it's a lot prettier here than it is in New Braunfels.
That is correct. So growing up, I mean, we always wanted to live here, and we never knew down the road that we eventually would land in this in
Yeah.
this place, because you're talking about the beach, the sand,
Yeah.
you're talking about dirt and the river.
Yeah.
You know, whenever
Yeah.
over there we were too little, which is the river is a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
You can go tubing down the river, but we were too little to go down the river. We were basically
Yeah.
never allowed,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, cool. So when y'all landed here, how was that when you got here at 10?
Well, looking back, I was kind of like, you know, I was a very stubborn child, you know, seeing other kids that kind of had a lot of other stuff that I didn't. I really wanted that, you know, and looking back, I would always like blame my parents. Hey, why can't you give me this? Why can't you give me that? And now growing up, they were giving me the best that they always could.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't, there was levels, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my aunt, my mom's sister, excuse me, had a mobile home in Freeport, and she let us stay in that for a couple years.
Okay.
And that's how basically my parents kind of got off their feet.
Yeah.
My third sister, she was graduating at the time in Texas. So my dad stayed back one more year, and it was a transition of 1 year. My mom with the two kids here, two sisters and one brother, and then my dad over there with my only sister until she graduated, and then she kind of came along.
Okay.
And then that's where it basically started.
Yeah. So you move here, and then how does it go? How does high school go? How's that? Did you go to Freeport for high school?
We basically started off in Freeport High School, actually Freeport Middle School at the time. And then, man, I just could never get my stuff straight. I was, academically, I never excelled. And then I was always getting either suspended or, you know, at the time I got expelled from that. So, and then they moved me over to South Walton High School at the time, because it was right on the verge. And same thing, you know, just
Just
never
getting in
get
trouble.
together. Always getting in trouble, man.
Yeah.
And then I got expelled from that school, and then they tried to give me another opportunity over in Freeport High School, and the same thing happened.
Oh, wow.
So here I sat here now with basically finishing high school, walking the stage, but not getting a diploma.
Okay. Did you go to college at all?
No, sir.
Yeah. Any desire to?
Now looking back, I should have gone, but no. At that time, no.
Yeah.
My head was basically wrapped up of, you know, why is other people getting other stuff and I'm not getting anything, and basically right on the verge of high school, you know, I started working at a restaurant as a dishwasher, and that's where I basically got introduced to, at that time, was cocaine, and that's basically where my drug life started.
Yeah. Had you smoked weed or anything before that?
Man, not really, to be honest. Looking back, I don't think I ever had any problem with any substance whatsoever leading up until, you know, meeting that group in either high school or, you know, in the workplace that I was working in. And that's basically where the drug life kind of evolved.
Yeah. What was it like when you first started using cocaine?
Well, to be honest, cocaine made me very paranoid. So I wasn't somebody that I would kick it with, like either in a club or out with people. And, you know, I would go to, it was basically like my coping mechanism. You know, I would grab it during whenever I was working, somebody would drop it off. And then, you know, I would not consume it while I was working, but whenever I got off, I would stop by, buy a pack of cigarettes, buy a bottle of water, and I would go to a park. You know, and it would kind of consist of sniff, one cigarette, and a little bit of water. And then sniff, a cigarette and a water until the bag was out and the cigarettes were out. And somehow, some way, I would make my way home. You know, and then stay awake for a couple of hours because it's not going to make you go to sleep. And then, you know, sleep during the day. And then it was just that cycle for a couple years.
Yeah.
You know.
Did it progress?
The consumption a little bit maybe, but it was just basically the same thing. It would basically start out with like a little 20-second, then it basically moved from anywhere from 1 gram to about an 8 bowl.
Okay.
You know, a night. You know, and it's
bit.
expensive. You know, so it was something that not only was it a lot whenever I got done looking back and saying, hey man, like how did I not OD? And then that kind of it kind of faded off once I met now my wife. Like it gave me a reason to kind of like get my eyes off of the substance and kind of try this over here. And then, you know, later down the road, it kind of came back, creeped up, you know, a handful of times. And then eventually that part fell off.
Did you have any sort of relationship with God previous to this, or?
No. So the background that I have is my dad's he's not a Jehovah's Witness believer, but basically his parents were. So we didn't get that side kind of growing up. My mom was a Baptist, and she would kind of like encourage us / force us to go to church, growing up, and we usually never really wanted to go. So she was the one, even till the day, that would get on her knees and kind of encourage us, or if we're going through something, kind of just tell us, hey, you're going through this because of this. And that was basically our rock of the encouragement side,
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you're doing cocaine, you're a couple years in, and then you meet your wife. What changed there? Did you stop using cocaine when you met your wife and started dating her?
Yeah, I would say yeah. I met her at that time. I transitioned over from being a dishwasher to a server down at the Harbor Walk. And at the Harbor Walk, that's whenever, at that time, it was booming. The nightlife was just, as soon as you got off, you would stay on the harbor and you would kind of just party it up, and then they would make, I was working at like a Latin cuisine, like a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
And they would make like these events, let's just say once a month. And they would, party it up till about 4 a.m, and it was nothing but like, Hispanic music. And she actually came there at the time with her ex-husband, right? So she goes there to kind of have a good time. I see her, and I was like, man, who's that? And then she was basically on the verge of, going through a divorce, just going through a rough time, and I guess she kind of, I followed her that night I looked her up on Facebook. I looked her up for like 10 hours, right? I was like looking like, who's this girl? Because she wouldn't give me her name. Usually Hispanic will kind of not give you your last name, so you won't look her up. I don't know if you've come across that, but I looked her up, and I added her as a friend, and it took her like about a month to kind of reply. But she would go back once a month to those parties.
Yeah.
And sure and behold, I started talking to her, and just as a friend.
Yeah.
At the beginning, and I kind of it was just something about her, that kind of just made me change. Like, there was something very unique that I hadn't experienced, and that was like paying attention to detail, loving for the simple stuff, just, bringing you a coffee, telling you how your day is going, just having those conversations that I wasn't usually surrounded with my parents. My parents kind of lived a pretty rough life. My dad was an alcoholic growing up, and either punches would be thrown, never hit my mom, but hitting walls, sometimes getting locked up, getting taken by the cops and stuff like that, fighting outside with another person. That's just kind of like the lifestyle that I grew up. So I didn't really know any better on the loving side. I never saw my parents kind of love on each other. I could only imagine their intimacy was behind doors. It's just, we were never seeing that, holding hands and stuff. So that really like caught on to me whenever she started, like, just like I said, she was married at the time, so it's not like she was like loving on me, but it was just the simple things. How you doing, and stuff like that. So
yeah, it wasn't modeled for you very well with your parents.
Not at all.
Well, how did you get? Let's fast forward to how did you get in recovery? Like where did your addiction stuff and getting involved in the church and your relationship with God, like where did that kind of where did the addiction stuff start, you think?
So not far from where we just left off. So basically, I meet her, and a couple years later down the road, she eventually gets divorced, and we start kind of dating and stuff like that, and we kind of stayed in communication throughout. And basically, I meet her, and my addiction really took off as far as like the pornography, masturbation took off whenever she got diagnosed with breast cancer. So I meet her in 2010. We get together within 2012, and she in 2015 she get diagnosed with breast cancer. So before that I really wanted a daughter. Like I always dreamed about having a daughter, and I wanted a daughter. Well, within those 2 time frames from the moment that I got with her and the moment she got diagnosed, we had lost 4 children.
Oh, wow.
And at the very end, we were going to the same gynecologist, and he kind of said this kind of like to try to uplift me, but he was like, "Hey, why don't you change church?" And just kind of get a joke out of it. But we were at the point of just being devastated, and he's like, "Hey guys," he's like, "I just recommend you just stop trying." So we left it at that, and she gets diagnosed with breast cancer. And right before that, I was like, well, this is maybe my time to leave her in a healthy position, just because I wanted a daughter. I never dreamed about maybe a boy or something like that, but I always dreamed about wanting a specific daughter, so she gets hit with breast cancer, and I was like, well, I can't leave her now, Let me go ahead and kick off my adultery phase of it. And my adultery phase basically started that, I was with this person, but I was sleeping around from basically the moment that I met her to the moment that I got with her till 3 years ago. Within all that time frame, as soon as I met her, I thought it would be okay to sleep around with other women. So fast forward, we are at the breast cancer phase. We go through it. No addiction really, had basically started. In 2014, I break my leg. I have surgery, but the addiction really didn't kind of kick off. I would actually sell my pills because I wasn't working, and I knew a buddy that I didn't even know you could sell those things at that time, right? And a buddy of mine kind of sold them to me. Yeah, it was something wrong to do, but he was more so kind of doing it like to pay my rent and because I wasn't producing any income. But once again, my addiction never took off. So she has her breast cancer. She has a double mastectomy. She gets them done. She has a deep flap reconstruction to reconstruct them. And we go through that phase. And after we go through that phase, at that point, we never really thought that we were going to have children, right? So one of the things that I emphasize is you lose your 4 children, you go through breast cancer, but I had never protected myself. The same-sex procedure was the exact same thing. You wouldn't protect yourself. So it's not that we weren't looking at it, but we weren't avoiding it because they had already told us it's not going to happen, right? So we were just doing our own thing. And, moving down the road, my company is doing great. We kick off our company, a pressure washing company, in 2016. It's doing great. And then May 6th of 2020, that was the day of the wildfires. I don't think nobody can ever forget that day of the Thompson wildfires. It was that day, at that time, right around 3 p.m. I was actually headed towards Destin with my truck and my rig at the time, and somebody pulled out in front of me, and I T-boned him, and I broke my back. And right before breaking my back, I was experiencing a little bit of uncomfort within my hips and my back, and that's where the addiction kind of took off. Me buying them on the streets and kind of just going on and so forth. Drinking socially, nothing crazy. After my accident, within the transition of my accident, that's where I started drinking more heavily. The accident happens in May 6th of 2020, and I broke my back.
You start taking pills.
I started taking pills. They make me wait 1 year, because it was a lot of stuff going through the insurance, and they make me wait 1 year from May 6th to July 13th of 21. That was my surgery date. Yeah. And man, I was slamming down pills left and right. Yeah. And drinking.
Yeah, that's a good combo. Taking pills and drinking. When you get recovered, right? So May 2021, is that right? When you get in, when you had your surgery, you come out of it, was it a fast recovery and then you were able to get off the pills?
No, well, I had my surgery in July 13th, and then from there, it's about a year and a half to 2 years into taking medication still and doing the rehab. And then from there, I went back, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm 30 years old, man. There's got to be something better than taking pills. Once again, I didn't take these pills to just maybe feel good and just kind of sit back and relax and just have a good time. I was genuinely taking pills, being on the job site, working, just trying to just push through. So sadly, I would do a property or wash a property, and that would be what would pay for the consumption. But I never took it in the form of I want to feel good. Yeah. It was just more to relieve pain.
Yeah. And then you get, so after you have your surgery and you get off of it, did you all come to some did you come to some point where you're like, hey, I need to change my life? I need,
So this is what changed my life. So the accident happens in May 6th, like I said. And within the beginning of the year to right after my accident, at that time, I was kind of living a dark life just because it's like, man, I wanted a little girl. They told me I'll never have kids. I can't leave her. Like, she doesn't deserve this, but yet I was still cheating. So it's kind of like, there's something wrong with you, and I lose the truck that I thought at the time was the most valuable thing that I could have. Any young person, a lifted F-250, looking good, everybody sees you're driving down the road, and that becomes totaled. And within a year, within a month or so, she tells me, hey, I'm pregnant. And the first thing that popped out of my mouth, and I was like, well, there goes another miscarriage. I mean, I think that's how it shows how broken I was at that time. And my mom was the one that just said, hey, you got to believe. You got to believe. I didn't want nothing to do with Jesus at the time. Before, I was in the root of my mess. I was in the thick of it and wanted absolutely nothing but what was going to make me feel better at the time, which was my consumption, which was my pills and alcohol. So she has to answer your question, she tells me we're pregnant, and then it starts like going over time, and you hit the 3 months and you're just like, man, you haven't lost it, but still dark, and then we have the gender reveal, and the gender reveal reveals that we're having a little girl, and I'm still dark at that time. It's like, until I don't have her in my hands, I'll never believe you. And that was basically telling God, I'll never believe you that you give me a child until I have it in my hands. And man, it just started growing and started growing and started growing. And on January 26th of 2022, January 26th of 2021, we had this child. So remember, it's like, this is in 2020. My operation is 1 year later. In that transition, we have our child. And whenever I see that thing come out, I mean, I was just like, I didn't tear up, and there's pictures to prove this, but it's just, I was just looking, man. It took me about almost an hour and a half of just kind of just me looking at this thing, and it's like, I would kind of pinch it. Like, is this thing, like, just honestly living something that I never thought would be in my hands, yet alone everything that I had gone through, everything that I had done to the person, everything that I had done to myself, coping with pills and alcohol. And we have our first daughter.
What's her name?
Her name's Leah.
Leah.
Yeah.
How cool. I remember the night that I had my first kid, my first daughter, everyone had told me, oh, when that baby happens, like, as soon as the baby comes, you're going to experience this, euphoric type experience. And when the baby first came out, I remember thinking, oh, I love you, but man, you ugly, because they come out purple and they wipe the baby down. The baby, like, pretty quickly their skin starts to turn less purple, and the life starts to come into the kid. But that whole first night, I just couldn't stop staring at her. Like, I just remember just sitting there like you. I just hold it. I wasn't bawling or anything like that, but I just could not. Like, I was trying to work too, so I had my laptop, and I'd be working, and I just kept staring at her. And I think there's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. But there's something to it that's, I think, spiritual. For sure.
Yet alone, it's like in the transition of me having our first daughter, and my wife back in 2016, she goes through breast cancer. My way of basically, like, numbing myself was, that's where the porn and masturbation kind of really kicked off. There was something that happened earlier, which I'll explain here in a little bit, that had happened. So I had experienced some stuff at a young age, but more so the actual watching on a screen and, kind of going to a bathroom or kind of, going somewhere else and doing your business. I think that really started right around 2016. So at a later age in life.
Yeah.
Basically being raw is because I wasn't receiving it from her. I would go, numb it out in the bedroom or in the bathroom or so.
Yeah. That chain, what happened after you had Leah?
Well, the party had not finished yet, so I have Leah, and you know, we get out of the hospital, and you know, we're kind of getting everything situated around the house, and with the next couple of weeks, you know, everything starts going good. You know, just kind of learning these new process. One thing that I don't have under my belt is I could never hear her like at nighttime. So I was never able to kind of hold her at night and kind of just, you know, stay with her throughout the night. That was all mama. I guess I would sleep too hard, you know, but within the next couple of months, we found out that she was pregnant again.
Oh, wow.
And this is where stuff really started shifting, just because it's kind of like me more having a conversation with him and me willing to want to kind of hear what you have to say for me. It's like, what are you telling me with this? You know? Well, first and foremost, after everything that I've been through, you still have grace on me. That's first and foremost, you know. And look at what you've done, and look at what you've been through. But yet, I'm still willing to give you this. And she finds out that she's pregnant, and my little girl is a couple months old, you know. And my wife is starting to have a belly. You know, I eventually have my surgery in July 13th, and you know. My wife, I get out of the hospital with COVID. She gets COVID. So a couple little things just start happening there. My mom takes my born child. My wife goes to the hospital. They take her in the ambulance, and just a little bit of chaotic stuff starts happening. But yet alone, I never knew that was actually the start of me experiencing, you know, life and fatherhood. You know.
Did she have the second child?
She did.
Okay.
So he was born later in January, so they're 11 months apart. I get bullied from that a lot. And so they're 11 months apart. Junior his name's Jose, exact same like me, but he's actually the third. So we got my dad, we got me, and now him, which is Jose A. Aguilar Jr. the third. And I would say that I never thought I would have like a boy, right? So it's more you have a girl, and then you have this boy, and just life just kind of starts starting from there.
Was it different having a boy?
No, to be honest, because it hadn't hit me just yet. Like, hey, I have a boy. Like, I guess I wasn't like the dad that always wanted like that boy. Like, I would always dream about that girl, you know. And then don't get me wrong, I see my boy now. He actually starts t-ball tomorrow. His first practice is tomorrow, and it's like, you know, I see him yesterday. We were buying all his stuff, and in the back of my mind is like this is really happening, you know. But that's where we only have two, which is a boy and a girl, 11 months apart. Leah born on the 26th of January, and Jose being born on the 6th of January.
That's awesome. When did you really start getting involved back into church, into like recovery type stuff at church?
Right around that time frame, I would say.
Yeah.
I can't really remember the specific date, but I was sitting outside in my gravel driveway, and I was just kind of just staring into space. And I really had like a moment of reflection of, I really wanted this. I really wanted to be a dad. Realistically, what kind of made me sour in my adulthood was not being able to be a dad at a young age, regardless if it's at a young age or later. I just, by the diagnostics that they gave you, you know, these are high-end doctors that are telling you that, hey, like, you know, the chances of you getting pregnant are very, very slim. So the miracle was there with the first one, and clearly the miracle was there with the second one after they told her that she would never have kids. And I'm having a reflection like in my gravel driveway, and it's like him telling me, what else do you want me to give you? Like you wanted what you got. Like, and my answer was like, I need to serve you. And that's where it basically took off. Still living, you know, wild, committing adultery. After my second child, I did it one more time, and that was September 23rd. And after this, I said, you know what? I can't be doing this. So God was already kind of like getting a hold of me slowly but surely. Wasn't involved in small groups. My marriage, even though we had children, was like on the verge of collapsing. By more so on my part by shame and guilt, not knowing how to carry conversations with her and kind of having a good time, knowing all the stuff that you had done, and how was I going to be able to tell her that of everything that I've done?
Yeah, all the guilt and shame. Holding those secrets. Did you find a specific ministry? How did you start to get, after that, did you go to church and say, hey, I need help?
Well, she kind of brought it up to our attention. We're going through a rough stage, and she said, hey, she's like, do you want to join a church? And I said, well, not really, but if it's going to fix my marriage, then I'm willing to do so. Like, I wasn't just kind of like saying, hey, I'm done. Like, I really wanted to. I just didn't know how to. Once again, more because of everything that I hold it in my mind, that how was I going to serve Jesus knowing everything that I had done? Or how was I going to be set free knowing everything that had been done, especially on my part, committing adultery, sleeping with other women, but yet telling the person that's right in front of me that I love you. So we go to this first church. Right there, they have that expo. Within the first or second week, they have the small group expo. I had never joined a small group, never really told anybody what I was going through. And I run into the small group expo. We're walking around as a couple, and we see, 5 days to a new marriage, and this is marriage couples group, and this marriage retreat, and, just different things they have for all sorts of ages and, whatever you're going through. But I ran into Steve Copey's group. And Steve Copey had a booth there that he was introducing the Book of Clean, for all men that are dealing with sexual integrity. And that was the first time that I heard now what I have, the Holy Spirit, to be able to tell me, to convict me in a heartbeat and say, hey, like, that's the group that I want you to be. And I was like, nope, I ain't going to that one. And I slipped right back past that one and kind of took on, because they'll give you like these little cards to take home and just kind of discuss it with your wife and what you want to do and so on. Little QR code to who do you have to connect with and so on.
Hey, what's up, guys? If you've been following me for a while, you know I'm a huge fan and supporter of Firecracker Farm. Alex, the owner, is not only an incredible human being, but he makes an incredible product, and that is why we could not be happier that they are sponsoring the Shoot Me Straight podcast. Each guest, when they come in, will get a sample of Firecracker Farm so they can take it back and enjoy, and I can tell you, to each person that we've given it to, they have not been disappointed. You can put these, put this salt on your favorite food, favorite beverage. I've even seen people put it in their coffee. They love it. There's an assortment of heat, so if you don't like it too hot, they definitely have that taken care of with some mild flavors. And then it goes all the way to extreme heat if you like to sweat. So if you guys are interested in purchasing some, go to firecracker.farm. All right, thank you for listening, and God bless.
So we get to the house, and man, I'm feeling hard conviction of needing to join that group. Let me clarify that up until this point, my wife had zero idea of the adultery, zero idea of the pornography, masturbation, and obviously had she knew what was going on with the pills and alcohol. We were trying to transition to try to get off of that.
Yeah.
And man, it's like we're sitting down, and she's like, "What do you think about the groups?" And I stayed quiet, and she's like, "Why do you stay quiet?" And I was like, "Because I'm feeling something inside of me that's telling me that I need to go to another group, but yet I know for a fact we need this group." So that was the time for me to open up and say, "Hey, I need to go to that group." And she's like, "Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "Yeah." And I was like, "I'm dealing with this and this and this." At the time, pornography and masturbation. Just going to the bathroom, I would spend 30, 40 minutes in the bathroom saying that my stomach wasn't feeling well, but yet I was doing something else. So I had that conversation. And one of the impactful things in our walk as a marriage couple is that she put her needs on hold to give me my need to be able to continue to walk forward. So resume, I go through the course and I meet Steve Copey. We go through the course. I was able to open up. I had never opened up to anybody. I was able to open up, and this is where basically my childhood starts, coming to light. Going in that group, I meet all different types of people. I was actually in that group. I'll never forget. I was sitting in the on this side, and the group basically started going around that way. So I was the last one. So I was able to hear so many stories. Well, I was like, well, if you shared that, you shared that, you shared that, you shared that, then, and it made me feel very, very comfortable. And when it got to my point, I shared a little bit, You know, hey, I'm dealing with porn and I'm dealing with masturbation, and that was it. You know, and just little by little started going to that group and started plugging away with the curriculum and just kind of just allowing, you know, to feel open to share.
Yeah.
You know, and then from there, right before joining Steve's group, I had met Kobe, which he hosts a group right down the road that is a small group. And he's like, hey, I was like, hey, people had been telling me that you have a group. And I was like, what do you think about the Clean group? So one of the cool things with our friendship is that I met him, but I said, hey, man, I would love to go to your group, but I need to go somewhere first. So I'll be back. So I go through Steve's group. We finished it out, and I was able to kind of just, you know, feel very comfortable and share. And yet I made my way over to Kobe's group. Well, in Kobe's group, they introduced me. At the time they do it, I believe they were doing Freedom twice a year, but at that time they were really focusing it to one season, which I believe is in the fall. And they were like, hey, I want you to go through Freedom. Didn't know that, he didn't know me, and he introduced me to Freedom, and we went through the 12 weeks of Freedom with the conference, and I was able to throughout the Freedom group talk about my adultery. You know, and
How freeing was that for you
to talk about my adultery?
to finally admit it to other people?
Well, respectfully, I don't care what you think about that. And deep inside of me, I cared what my wife was going to think about me.
Yeah.
So me sharing it with other people didn't faze me as much as like, how am I going to share this with my wife?
For sure.
So, you know, I started sharing that with people, and whenever I'm working, you know, I'm doing pressure washing, so I have my headphones, so I'm usually listening to music, and I really started using that time to kind of have a conversation with God, you know. And Ephesians talks about how if you confess your sins, you know, and I started like chewing on that, and I started like marinating on that and like reflecting on it, and I'm like, hey man, like, what are you trying to tell me with this chapter, with this verse, like, and all I got was like, why are you gonna tell it to me if I've seen everything? Turn around to the person that you've done damage to and tell her everything that you've done. Plug into me, seek me, and I will heal you. And it took me a little bit to kind of come to terms with that, to agree to that, to do that. And man, I always talk about how if people saw me out there, they probably think, man, this guy is like, he's on something. Because I was going back and forth, talking to the air and just, you know, but inside of me, I was having that conversation. And that conversation was like, man, I kid you not, I said this. I was like, you are tripping, God, if you think that I'm going to turn over to my wife and tell her everything that I have done to her. Like, you're just, no. The answer was no. But like all of us, right, we put God in the box and we give him standards, and we kind of tell him what we're going to do, unfortunately. And I was like, you know what, but I'll do something. At the time, right on the verge of my marriage, you know, I stepped outside of my marriage, and I thought that having this relationship with a specific girl would give me the girl that I wanted. And this part is very, very deep because, you know, we're going through the thick of it. You know, I kind of just don't come home for a couple days. And I'm staying in a hotel. This girl comes over, you know, and I specifically told her that I wanted a girl. And when we got done having sex, you know, the part that, you know, I didn't use protection and I didn't pull out, she got very frustrated about it, like saying, no, I don't want a girl. And man, that kind of pulled me away. And I was driving down in Freeport, I was doing something, and I heard a voice say, go home. Your stuff is at home. I was like, what do you mean at home? The doctors told her that she would never have a child. Why do you think that my stuff is at home? And yet and behold, my wife gets pregnant a couple months later. So up until that point, that's where we're at.
Yeah. How did the conversation go with your wife?
About me confessing to her?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm within the 12 weeks of freedom, and we're going through that, and it's talking about what are you going through, where do you need to be free, what do you need to let go, and whenever I was working, I told God, I was like, you know what? I was like, I ain't telling her anything, but I promise you one thing, and I think I hold my promise to him, that it was that if she ever brings this up, I'm done running. If she ever asks me whatever she wants to know about that, I'm done running, and I'm willing to share with her everything that I have done. If you say that you're going to heal me. And that was, for me, I think that was my leap of faith, saying, hey, you know what? I'm willing to try it. Because my mind couldn't take, there's one thing that I can be in front of you telling you, hey, you know what, like, life is good and everything, but if you knew, what you're going through and stuff, your mind's eating you away. So I couldn't live with that, and we're driving down the road, and I know for a fact that this was a God moment because my 2 children were asleep in the car. We're right there in front of Small Mart. There's some apartments next door. That was my last hiccup, my last mess up. And she looked over and stared at those apartments, and she said, will I ever know whatever happened in that apartment? And I started laughing because I had promised to him. And I was kind of mad at it. I was like, man, you would bring this up, like, and kind of was wrestling with that for a little bit. But I was like, you know what? I said what I promised you that. And I said, you really want to know? And she's like, yeah. And man, I was telling Isaiah, I was like, I felt that I drove like from here to Texas and back, man. We drove down 98, and somehow, some way we turned back around. We were driving, and we were just having that moment, having that conversation. And me just kind of literally right there, I had the knife right here. And as I was driving down the road, I was inserting it more into her heart. And as I was coming back, I was twisting it with all the stuff that basically I was like unleashing to her. And that was, she was asking me questions of, did you ever sleep with anyone? And I said, yes. And how many? And was it inside my home? And I had to say yes. Was it inside my bedroom? And I confidently said no. And just kind of just where, who, what, and just having that conversation with her. And whenever she get done, I'll never forget these words. And she's like, man, I shouldn't have asked. And that was where the turning point was. And it got dark for a little bit. No arguments, no, throwing pillows, throwing dishes. She's Puerto Rican, by the way. But she's a loving person. And it wasn't none of that. It was more the questions. And she's like, well, how are we going to get past this? And that was like my antennas went up. And I said, there you are. You know what I mean? As in talking to God. There you are. And
you're saying that for the fact that she was willing.
Correct.
To stay with you and grow past it.
Correct. Never was that, whenever I told that, she said she wanted a divorce. Never that she told me, how could you ever done this to me? Never was it like in an argumental type way. It was more like, man, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
Like, man, I'm crushed. You know what I mean? Like, but we have 2 children in the back of our car. Like, how are we going to get over that? And we talk about that so openly. And she's like, that humiliating part to say, hey, you know what? Like, this just happened to me. But yet I'm willing to step into another chapter was such a energy booster for me to say, hey, you know what? Like, there's something there. Chase it. And now I know his name is Jesus. And that was basically the turning point. We go through freedom. And we go, and I took this to the cross, and I said, God, you know what, like my bad, like, I'm sorry. Like, now looking back, and it's like, man, what an idiot. You know what I mean? You did all these things thinking it was okay. And there's a reason that I'm sitting here today to be able to show somebody, say, you know what, it's not worth it. You know what I mean? To be able to tell somebody that's in the thick of that mess, life's going great, business is good, you're having problems at the house and you're seeking other women somewhere else. Look, it's not worth it. You know what I mean? So I think it's more so it's the fact that I got another opportunity that I don't think I take lightly. So we have this conference. She, by the way, she's going through freedom. And she's on the other side in the same building, in the same conference on the other side because they separate you. They have all the males over here and all the women over here. They got males participating with males and they got female participating with females, but they never cross. They show the same message, the same conferences going on. They have separate stuff going on, separate crosses, separate altars, separate, everything's separate, and while we're going through this, we're sending text messages to each other. And I'm saying, you know what, like, I've come to terms that, I destroyed you. I crushed you. And I was like, I don't take lightly the fact that you're giving me a second opportunity. And it was always in an uplifting way. And she's like, we got this. We're going to be stronger together. And my friend, up until today, I haven't found somebody else that's going through that has been able to get a second opportunity to be able to say, hey, you know what, like, I've been in that same boat, which there clearly is. But a lot of times is I want a divorce. I don't want to see you again. I'm going to take my children. I'm going to take them her family's from Puerto Rico, so I'm going to take them back to Puerto Rico, and you'll never see them ever again, and so on and so on. You know, so for the fact that I was able to get that second opportunity was basically a game changer. And it made me love more in Jesus, trying to seek him. But more so, you know, I've learned that, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You know, so I was trying to stay in my lane, just trying to stay plugged in, trying to do stuff. And for me, staying plugged in and trying to do stuff was participating in small groups. And that was like, you deal with a lot of, you know, addict recovery. Like whenever you get something shot up your vein, I never shot something up my vein, but whenever you get that fix, you shoot something up, you know, you feel that, like, that goodness, right? You're just like, oh, right? Whenever the more I started experiencing Jesus, it was like, oh, like freedom, right? And it was like more like, and I know it sucks. I try to compare Jesus to drugs, right? But the comparison is more of like the feeling that you get. You know, it's like, oh, like free, right?
Yep.
And I think that was more like I want more of you, drug. I want the drug. Yeah. You know, so I think that's where, you know, we go through the conference, we get all that done, and you know, we're chuckling away of how can our marriage be better. So I stay plugged in a small group, and freedom pops up again. I'm not leading anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm just a participant. I stay plugged in. Man, I probably miss one or two nights out of the whole year. Like, I'm really trying to stay committed here. Yeah. Because if this woman's willing to give me a second opportunity, I got to do my part. Yeah. You know what I mean? So whenever all that stuff did really hit the fan, we did seek a marriage counseling group within the church. Sure. And he helped us out tremendously. Oh. Matter of fact, she says that if it wasn't for that marriage counseling group, she could never really forgive. Yeah. So we took some marriage counseling, and it worked. It worked very, very well. Yeah. And basically, the marriage counsel, he told me, he's like, I need you to worry about you. I don't need you to look over there. I don't need you to say, hey, you need this fix, you need that fix. I need you to worry about you. Straight up told me, worry about you and seek Jesus, and the rest will align. Same thing with her, you know, and gave her tips and gave her strategies, and she chuckled away and I chuckled away, and man, all this just started uniting. You know, on my kids' part, you know, they didn't really go through the downside of going, you know, you're going through that mess, and sometimes you leave your kids with your mom, or you neglect them or something. No, that part, I think the kids were very well fed, you know, us being involved in their life, you know, taking them to gymnastics. And man, we're really, really trying to make this thing work again, primarily from my part. And I know for a fact from her part, you know, so fast forward, you know, we're going through small groups, we're doing life, we're doing good. It's slowly but turning, and we go through freedom again. And this is where everything starts shifting. And going through freedom again, they basically said, you always got something. You know, and it's like, is there anything else? And that was my second opportunity to say, hey, you know what? Like, something like happened to me whenever I was little that like just tore me apart. You know, and I was able to start sharing. I was able to start having those conversations. And basically it consists of this. Remember when I told you whenever we were living in Texas and we would come over here like 2 weeks? So my parents would leave us. We would stay with aunts and uncles. And they'd either do their thing, they'd still be there, or whatever the case is. But we would like to sleep with our cousins, because I was just like you know, have little sleepovers and stuff. Well, I was at my aunt's house one day, and one of my uncles, he's not realistically, he's my uncle's brother, but he was always in the family, so we would always call him like an uncle, right? So blood, not an uncle, but somebody real involved in the family, which is my uncle's brother. Pulls me into a room and says, he's like, hey, come here. I need some help with something. And as soon as I walk in, he had pulled out his penis. And I was like 5 or 6 at the time. I don't really remember the actual time. But whenever we would travel, that would happen. That actually happened within the first 2 times that we would travel. We would travel for a couple years, you know, every year for a couple years. This was our vacation, nothing else. And that happened. And he made me do stuff with his penis that I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I didn't even really know what I was supposed to be doing. And a couple minutes later, I just kind of for whatever God reason, I pushed them and I ran, never said anything to anybody, kind of just kept it quiet. But the triggering part was that in our sleepovers with my other male cousins, we thought it would be okay to basically like have sexual acts with cousins, as raw as it sounds, suck each other's penis and think it was okay. Yeah. You know, why? Because that uncle had basically molested all of us, and he kind of just showed us that, hey, this is normal. So at that time, my identity was like, well, I was basically like confused. Like, is it okay to do stuff like men on men? And I took that for many, many years. Never told anybody. Never. My parents never knew. Actually, my parents knew at a later time. And every time that we would come, either they would go, we would come, those acts would always happen and happen and happen and happen. And man, that really tore me up as a child. You know, just experiencing that, going through that, just first and foremost, no child needs to have to turn around and get something shoved up their rear. Just that's not meant to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was like all that confusion part was a real challenge for me of, man, what are you going to think about me? Like, I say that very openly and freely now because, you know, I met Jesus, but it's like at that time, it's like, what are you going to think about me? It's like, if I share this to me, oh, you're gay, or you're not accepted, you're rejected, you know, and just kind of so on and so on. So I just always kept it quiet, you know, and all this started happening, that I really never not only knew my identity, but never had like a foundation of like, hey, like this is what you're supposed to do. You know, so growing up and, you know, going through the second freedom, I was able to have a conversation with my wife and we sat down, and that was the first time I had shared it to anybody, you know, and it was like, you know why I did all this, you know why all this addiction, all this alcohol, all this cheating on you. And it's like, because I have felt so broken to be able to not share anybody what had happened to me whenever I was little. And that was the very first person that heard it. And I share all that. I had shared all that throughout the night with her. I had a good conversation. It felt for hours, right? And she looked at me in the eyes and she said, that's not you. And once again, that was like such a positive motivator to say, hey, you know what, like, come on, like, keep on chuckling, keep on pressing, keep on seeking, and having that conversation of, dude, you tell your wife that you had another interaction with another male, think about that. Would she judge you? I don't know about yours, but in my mind at the beginning was like, what is my wife going to think about me? I don't want to be with you. So that was my fear of not being able to kind of share that with her.
I think what's wild is like the conversation, and I can't tell you how many guys that I've talked to that have been molested and finally confessing it for the first time, and they're in their 40s or 30s, and there's especially as a kid, they take that as an identity thing, and so they think, oh, you know, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, like when you're young adolescent, like you're navigating, you're figuring things out, you don't know who you are, you're looking to parents, to social stuff to get identity. And when they have a molestation of some sort, or they sleep around with another kid or something like that, a lot of times they store that in the back of their mind, and they'll think going forward, deep down inside, I'm actually gay, or I'm actually, you know, they take it as identity thing. When the truth is, no, you were molested, or no, like you can see that as an adult. Like if someone came to you and said that today, they're like, you know, I had this happen with my uncle when I was little, so therefore I'm gay. You go, no, that's not true. You were a kid. But when it happens to you, it gets deep down in there, and they have that happen, and then they sometimes it's so buried for so many years that it has so much power, and so like when they actually confess it and get it out there, I mean, it just loses its power over you, which is pretty incredible, because the stuff that comes out of it is often really twisted when it's been buried for years and years and years. And so I think that's an awesome story. If guys are struggling, whether it be they've had a past of molestation, or just their sexual integrity or secrets like that, what would you recommend for them to do?
First and foremost, I think that you have to have an encounter with God, right? Like you have to cry out to him and just say, hey, you know what? This is where I'm at. Because if you say like, hey, you know what? I'm good. Like you're good. You know what I need. Then, you know, I don't think that's like a good heart posture, you know, but if you kind of just say, hey, you know what? This is where I'm at and I need help. You know, I think small groups is the answer. If if you ask me, because it will cultivate something that you'll feel so safe to be able to share, to be able to go back to your wife and say, hey, you know what, I'm going through this problem. Because I don't know for all men, I don't know for all wives, but, and I'm speaking for mine, but it's, if you really would go to your wife and say, hey, you know what, I'm struggling watching pornography and masturbation. Why are you doing that? You know, because I want to have sex like more often with you, or whatever the case may be, and have that conversation. I don't think it'll go downhill, if you ask me. A lot of people will say, yeah, well, you got to be careful how you tell your wives, but I think it's just like a heart posture. If you were to say, hey, you know what, like, this is where I'm at, you know, I think there's plenty of help, but I think there's no other person more supportive than your wife, than your partner.
Yeah.
Because, man, that's your biggest cheerleader. That's your biggest fan right there. I've come to find out that's my biggest fan. You know, coming into this podcast, you know, she knew I was heading over there, and she's like, hey, man, you got it. You tell me that's not a cheerleader. Like, that is my number one fan, to be able to try to share to other people what we have gone through. You know, I'm the talker. She's more of like the quiet person. You know what I mean? So it's like, I kind of see that. But it's like she's my number one fan to say, hey, you know what, like, share. Go over there and help other people. Because we realize what happened to us is definitely for a situation like this, so other people can see that.
Yeah.
You know, but you got to get vulnerable. You know what hurts, and you know what's in there. You do, because it's like every day there wasn't a day that I would go by not thinking about what had happened. Hey, you know what? This happened as a little kid. And not necessarily the molested part. Like, to be honest, like, I never thought about that as much. What really, really threw me away was having the interactions with my cousins. You know, and realistically, you know why I decided to come here and accept this? Because I want my cousins to be able to hear this one day. I want them to, wherever this goes, to be able to them see this and say, hey, you know what? You're next. You know what I mean? Because I really want that for you. You know, they're just as broken as I was. And if I wouldn't have had that encounter, and if I wouldn't have been plugged away as I am now in that small group, I'd be just as broken. You know what I mean? And I think that's my biggest cry today, just to say, hey, you know what? I want not only my cousins, but I want people to know, like, man, there's an answer. But you got to be willing to turn to him.
Come on.
You know
I
what
love it. Awesome. Thank you, Jose. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for, man, sounds like you have an incredible wife, too. So encouraged by that. I hope people that listen to this will get plugged in whatever way that looks like. I do think small groups, it's hard for me to see you have real long lasting like growth without intimacy within small groups. Like true honesty and true vulnerability within, like trusted small groups within a church. I think that's where real growth happens. But for sure, I mean, it comes down initially for that first relationship with God and how He guides them. Appreciate you sharing your story. Anything else you want to say before we end this podcast?
You know, I got interviewed in the radio station about a year or two for the exact same reason, and it was basically about the everything that I had kind of gone through my adultery. Yeah. And my wife knows this, right? It's like, you know, I've asked her for forgiveness so many times, and I really felt that I've been forgiven, you know. But I will use this opportunity to say, hey, to any of the girls that I done messed up with, like, I'm sorry that I abused that and I took advantage of that, because they need a second opportunity also, along with, you know, my cousins, more so my uncle. Like, you need a second opportunity, because 9 times out of 10, it's like, I don't know if that happened to you. Let me share one win with you before we close, and that is this December 18th is my birthday, the one that just passed. And the best gift that I have ever gotten, like ever gotten, was my parents were on the way to go pick up my sister at the airport because she was flying in for my birthday. And our party was the next day. And they stopped by just to kind of say happy birthday. I had a little cake just for my little ones, kind of blow their little candles. And as I had earlier that day, my dad sent me a message and said, hey, son, he's like, I just want you to know how proud of you I am. And those were the very first words that I have ever heard him ever say, telling me that, you know, because I never grew up with that.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, to all dads out there, like, it's so important to tell your kids how proud of you of them, how much you love them, you know, if they ever need a talk, because what happened to me made me not have a conversation with my dad with what had happened. You know, so he sends me that text message throughout the day, and I read that, and dude, it broke me. So that was like the start of a good day for me, right? I showed my wife, and she was just kind of like celebrating it with me. So my parents stopped by, and they kind of had that cake, and man, I immediately like heard the Holy Spirit said, "This is the time that I've been cultivating for this, so go get it." That was it. And I didn't know how, and I wanted to, and dude, I would always freeze times before that because I knew what I wanted to share with him. And I said, "Hey, Dad," I was like, they're about to leave. I was like, "Hey, Dad, do you have a minute?" Not even my mom, because they were together. I was like, "Dad, do you have a minute?" And about a year ago, whenever I started going to small groups, I had a conversation with my mom, and my mom was kind of blown away with what had happened, that she kind of didn't really want to believe it, and I don't judge her nor blame her. And so she kind of knew about a year before, but man, I really wanted my dad to know. And my going through small groups and being involved, they had really encouraged me and pushed me to say, "Hey, you know what? You will have that conversation with your dad one day," you know. And man, that happened on December 18th of this past year. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I really want you to hear something. If you can give me one gift, is just give me 2 minutes and just kind of sit there and just kind of hear me out." And man, I was able to share with him what had happened, everything, you know, from the moment that it happened to me, the moment with my cousins. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, man, like, I am looking at you." And I said, "Hey, Dad, like, you know, I always thought that you never wanted a relationship with me, but down deep inside, like, I'm sorry that I never could go to you and tell you what had happened. And it's actually me." So I actually was able to use that opportunity to say, "Hey, you know what? Like, I'm sorry." You know, it's never too late to have a conversation, and it's never too late to have an amazing relationship as a father and son. You know, we don't hate each other, but we've had our frictions, you know, growing up and stuff. And I finally know that it was all because what had happened to me. I wasn't able to go with him. Why am I telling you that? Because there's kids out there that this happens to them, and they don't know how to go about to their kids. There's dads out there that they happen to them, and they don't know how to talk to their kids about, you know, protecting themselves and being careful and just having those hard conversations.
Yeah.
You know, so man, that birthday, I think I'll never forget, you know, and I have a picture that I'll share with you at the end of this. And it's like, man, he came over here and he hugged me. He's not a believer. He's like, kind of like, you know, trying to believe somewhat, like, because of his hurts. He's gone through a lot whenever he was growing up, and you know, an alcoholic dad that hit his mom, and just kind of just a rough lifestyle, right? And because I had that conversation with him, you know, and I can hear him right here that he was crying. I was crying. My mom was crying. My wife was recording because it was just like a, you know, an amazing moment from far away. And she showed it to me after, and he said these words that I'll never forget. And he said, "Give that up to God." And this is coming from a person that, once again, doesn't believe, you know, for his own reasons, you know, and he will, because I'm really, truly believing that he'll come to his feet, you know, sooner or later.
No.
So at his timing. But it was him able to just say that said, "Hey, you know what? Like, everything that I gone through, everything that happened, it all makes sense with the words of my wife being encouragement, giving me a second opportunity, and my dad never seeking either revenge for what happened, like, or pushing me away." You know, and like now it's like you call him up and it's like, he was at my house last night, it's not what it should be, but it's not what it once was. And dude, it makes me and encourages me to say, "Hey, you know what? Now it's up to you to invite him here and go here, you know, spend some time." My dad's an old man that loves to change the brakes on a car, and if that's what makes him happy, man, you best believe I'll be over there changing the tire. I don't like to get my hands dirty, but I'll do that to spend time with my dad. I won't see him at an outlet mall, you know, buying whatever, but it's like, if that makes him happy to have a bonfire and burn some wood, I'll do that to have a relationship. So I hope every father and son gets to do that, because it's never too late. I don't care if you're 90 or I don't care if you're 4 years old.
Yeah. Come on. Hey, if people wanted to get a hold of you, and if they're struggling or something like that, is there a good way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to say the number. I can say the number either here
Sure,
or
you
just
can.
you can drop it in the in the link at the bottom. But first and foremost, my name's Jose Aguilar, and my telephone number is area code 850-428-3558. Man, I'd love to chat. Either give me a call, shoot me a voicemail, shoot me a text, and man, I'll make time for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jose.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, out.
Hey, what's up, guys? So when I'm not doing the podcast, I'm doing a lot of traveling. I put on training all over the country for LE and civilians. I also travel a lot for my nonprofit, the Pipe Hitter Foundation. And as you guys know, travel going back and forth can wear you down. But this past year, I have found the antidote. So let me put you on to Aquavita, Destin's premier IV therapy and oxygen bar. This place is owned and operated by a board-certified ER physician with over 23 years of experience, so you know your health is in good hands. Every IV drip is mixed to Board of Pharmacy standards and backed by CDC-level infection control. Whether you're dealing with a fatigue, a hangover, jet lag, stress, immunity issues, or even PMS, they've got custom vitamin drips and boosters tailored just for that. When you go inside, the place is pretty awesome. It puts you at ease right when you go in there. They have comfy lounge chairs, which are perfect for singles or couples, full group sessions. And you can even book the whole space for bachelor or bachelorette parties, race day recovery, or wellness events. While you're in there, they go the extra mile too. They'll give you blankets, sleep masks, earplugs, aromatherapy oxygen, all complimentary. And the best part, every visit includes direct care from the physician and experienced RNs, all focused on fast, safe, and affordable wellness. So if you're in the Destin area, hit up Aquavita. Your body will definitely thank you.